First is Dr. Jemimah Njoki, and she is the current Africa Director for the International Food Policy Research Institute. Dr. Jemimah, given the challenges that have been presented, can you indicate, maybe provide us with some advice on what we should be concerning ourselves with going forward? What else do we need to generate evidence on to inform equity policies and interventions that can help us address equity better within the context of our theme of cultivating Africa by galvanizing partnerships for promoting resilient agriculture and food systems in Africa in the shadow of COVID-19 pandemic? Over to you, Dr. Jemimah Njoki.
Thank you very much, Namukolo. That's quite a dense question. And so what I'm going to do is respond to what I have heard from the three presentations in terms of how I think we can move forward, and then give a few general remarks that cut across the whole theme of how we can make nutrition more equitable. So first of all, I think there is a need to really link nutrition with other practices and not look at nutrition as a standalone issue. And what I mean here is we heard from Aulo talking about the impact of some of the nutrition programs on women's time use. So how do we link better nutrition interventions and caregiving practices, but also something that I have not heard much of and that we know has a huge impact on nutrition outcomes, water and sanitation. Now, what this means is that we need more multi-sectoral approaches that actually link agriculture so that we are not just thinking about supplementation, but some of the food-based solutions to nutrition, linking that with water and sanitation, but also recognizing that some of women's time use is related to the heavy burden that they carry in terms of unpaid care work. And this actually calls for looking at some of the social and gender norms that define women's engagement in unpaid care work and how that can be reduced, redistributed, and recognized. The second thing that I take from these presentations, especially from Nina's presentation on impact of COVID, not just on food security, nutrition, food systems, but also on jobs and other sectors, is the importance of social safety nets in addressing these impacts and in actually setting up governments to be able to deal with these with other such impacts in the future. And from a nutrition perspective, I think we have a lot of evidence that actually shows that targeting of social protection programs, targeting of cash grants, especially to women, has a huge impact on their nutrition and on nutrition of children. And the key question then is how we actually bring this evidence in ways that governments can actually use it to target social safety nets. The third thing that I have heard from Filippo is on the affordability of nutritious diets, and the last state of food insecurity has actually shown that close to 75% of people in the African continent cannot actually afford a nutritious diet. And that's a huge number of people. So affordability actually remains a key challenge, and especially for certain groups of people, even within households. And so targeting of interventions will remain a key strategy going forward. And whether this is gender targeting, whether it is geographical targeting, there is also evidence that's showing that a lot of the rural producers, people who are actually producing the food that we eat, are hungry, and that is not acceptable. And so targeting of nutrition programs is going to be a key issue going forward. I do want now to just make a few general recommendations, and I have seen this in the questions as well, around engaging men for nutrition and more broadly for gender equality. I have a strong belief that men and boys are the hidden half to better nutrition outcomes for women, for children, and all household members. And therefore, their engagement is going to be critical for two reasons. One, because they remain key decision makers on food production, on how land is allocated and how land is utilized. And so as we think about more food-based solutions to our nutrition problems, they have to be a critical group that needs to be engaged. And the second reason has to do with what Aulo talked about earlier on women's time use. The women, men and boys need to be much more engaged in caregiving. We are seeing a lot of shifts in this, but it is not enough. And I know there's approaches that other organizations that like Promudo and others are using to actually get men and boys more engaged in unpaid care work, because this is good for them that they are engaged, but it is also good in terms of reducing women's burden on unpaid care work. The second general point I would like to say is a policy support. You talked about what does this mean for policy and what needs to happen. I think at government level, we have seen a lot of defranchise. We have seen nutrition is dealt with from multiple departments. All the departments that have a bearing on nutrition are actually in different ministries. If you think about water, if you think about agriculture, etc. And we need some more multi-stakeholder engagement at this level, and investments and prioritization of interventions that lead to better nutrition outcomes. And the last thing I see you asking me to conclude is that we also have to clearly think about some of the unintended impacts that, like women's time use, if we are to build back better after COVID. Thank you very much, Namukolo.